Good evening, Dr. Esposito. First off, I would like to say that I hope you and your families are staying safe and healthy in these troubled times. I chose to do my speech on addiction as a disease, not a choice, specifically alcoholism. Addiction has long since been viewed as a choice and not as a disease in America. People who suffer from alcoholism have suffered from scrutiny when coming out and looking for help, or they were being judged, because people believe that they make the choice to drink and not that it is in fact a disease. Addicts are typically pushed away by their family and friends due to their erratic behavior, causing them to only feel alone and drink more. Americans as a whole need to change their culture and recognize that addictions, specifically alcoholism, is not a choice, that it is a disease, and we need to remove the stigma and stereotypes from it and be more willing to help the people who suffer from this addiction. By removing the stigmas that alcoholism is a choice, the American culture as a whole can start to recognize that these people don't need just a reality check to help them want to get clean and sober. They need professional medical and mental help, not from family and friends. And they need to recognize within themselves that they need help and they are causing self-harm. In a study presented by George Mason University, they had stated that the American Medical Association declared alcoholism as a disease in 1956, but to this day it is still seen by the American public that people who suffer from alcoholism choose to drink, not that when the person becomes addicted to alcoholism that it affects their brain and they no longer have a choice. They feel that alcohol is something they need daily to survive and to function through daily life. In the same study, it had stated that alcoholism is similar to diabetes in the fact that even though diabetes is not an addiction, both of them can lead to organ failure if left untreated. According to the National Drug Institute on Abuse, addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing brain disease that is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and use despite the harmful consequences. In layman's terms, the chemistry of the brain is affected by the alcohol to the point where a person will seek out their desired drug, in this case alcohol, despite the consequences. They no longer recognize how harmful their actions are to their body due to their brain chemistry being altered. They now believe that they need alcohol to survive and function. And according to the Society of American Addiction Medicine, it can also be considered a disease because addiction can be traced to environmental factors and hereditary and genetic factors. If a child grows up in an unstructured environment where addiction is prevalent and normalized, it can lead to a life where addiction is a normality and not viewed as a bad thing per se, and they can start to lead a life that they grew up in. As for the hereditary and genetic aspects of addiction, if a baby is born to an alcoholic mother who uses alcohol while pregnant, the baby can develop fetal alcohol syndrome, which can lead to birth defects, growth defects, and brain damage. And according to the Mayo Clinic, fetal alcohol syndrome can also lead to behavioral problems and impulse control. Addiction at its very beginning is a form of impulse control. Someone has an impulse or an urge to try this that they cannot control, or they choose not to control. This is giving newborn babies who do not have a choice or the capability to make a choice for themselves a genetic predisposition to addiction as soon as they are born, solely because their mother, who did not seek out the help or know she could get help when she was pregnant. In today's culture, a lot of opinions and stereotypes are put out in the public from older generations, or the stereotypes and stigmas are just so woven into society because they've been there for so long, that addiction is a choice and not a disease. I believe that if younger generations in the youth of America it's made known to them that addiction is a disease, that they can start bringing in the facts and statistics to the upcoming generations, that it will remove the stigma surrounding addiction as a whole. If they put out factual evidence to the population and bring awareness to addiction, that it's a disease and the people who suffer from it need help instead of society labeling them as dirty or bad people, We should make the resources more available to them so they know they have help when they need it. In the United States, most children actually go through a DARE program or or drug abuse resistance program, or they go through a program like Kids Escaping Drugs. And if these younger generations start to see through these programs that the facts and statistics show why alcoholism is a disease and not a choice, then they will be more likely to start to remove and weed out the stigmatism surrounding it, and they will start to disappear. And hopefully, by removing the stigmatism surrounding it, addicts will want to reach out to their families and the resources that are made available to them so to get help, and they will start to recognize that they are indeed a danger to themselves and their own health. According to Baldwin research, people who argue that addiction is not a disease, that it's a choice, say that removing the stigmatism surrounding addiction will allow addicts to make more excuses on why they are not getting help, and they will take advantage of the system and the resources that would be made readily available to them instead of using them properly to get the help they need. And by acknowledging that we know people will take advantage of the system, we can't help that there's always going to be somebody who's going to take advantage of the system. We can implement steps in our program of helping addicts get clean by making them come to weekly meetings such as AA or counseling meetings, journaling their days and if they drank that day and how much and what caused them to drink so they could then avoid those triggers as soon as they acknowledge what they are. And by doing this, it will prove that they are serious in wanting help and wanting to get clean. Why else would they put the effort in to do so if they didn't want to get sober? Also, if the resources being given to them are not embraced fully, they could have a counselor checking in on them often, and it could potentially become frustrating to them and potentially become a reason that they drink because they feel like they're being pushed into being clean instead of just receiving the help that they need. That they could feel bothered or they could feel pressured, and that's not something that we would want to do. So we would set up a program that would fit their personality type. We wouldn't have one general mass program for everyone because every human will react to everything different. What I ask of America's youth and the growing generations now is, if you know someone who is suffering from addiction, or even if you don't know someone, don't be afraid to reach out and show them you care and are willing to point them in the direction of help and even bring them to the help. Maybe just that one step of taking them to an AA meeting, and giving them the transportation that they need if it's not readily available to them, will spark will spark their desire to get clean. And where taking them somewhere where they can receive proper medical and mental treatment will also benefit them. People at home, they're not psychologists, they're not psychiatrists, they can't tell you what's going on. You're not WebMD, you shouldn't be looking to those resources. You should be taking them to somewhere where they can receive actual help that will help them. And hopefully by the younger generations taking away these stigmatisms and stereotypes, it will show that these people need to be treated as humans, just as you would treat someone who has diabetes. They suffer from a sickness that they cannot control and they never chose to have it. They both deserve medical help that they need, and there should not be a public stigma surrounding it. And hopefully by removing all these stigmatisms, addicts will recognize that there is help out there. There are free resources. There are call centers that they can use, and hopefully one day addiction will no longer be viewed as a choice. It will be recognized for what it is, as a disease.